Greetings, friend. Coach Tim here from BioTrust. And one of the most common questions that I get when it comes to exercise is making modifications, okay, to the core exercises. How can I make those not necessarily easier, but how can I change those so that they can meet me where I am in my journey? So examples of would be things like squats, push-ups, planks, mountain climbers, burpees. That's what Karen Funk, our superstar VIP member Karen Funk, recently asked for, and those are very common questions. So I'd like to take a few minutes to go over some of the regressions that I would make to the typical, because we're pretty familiar with what the typical looks like, point B, but what we need to be able to do is get from point A to point B. And sometimes that's not just one step, sometimes it's 2, 3, maybe even 4 steps, depending on where you're at in your fitness journey, whether you're dealing with an injury or just having exercise for a period of time, okay? So let's start by looking at the squat. And what I wanna do first is actually show what a normal squat would look like, a full range of motion squat if you're able to do it, okay? So just a body weight squat. So feet are usually slightly wider than shoulder width apart, and the motion is gonna be a combination of flexing at the hips and flexing at the knees, right? So it's gonna be a squat down and then back up, squat down and back up. Now, commonly, I almost did it right there myself, but commonly a lot of people want to just bend the knees, or some people just want to bend the hips or flex at the hips. It's actually a combination of both. We want to sit the hips right down in between our legs, right? So it's just here and then back up, here and then back up. And we're keeping our feet nice and flat, connected to the ground, okay? Now, if that's hard, what you can start by doing is just doing the littlest range of motion that you can comfortably. So maybe it's just a quarter squat. Maybe it's just a quarter squat. And you can see my torso does lean forward, but my pelvis is going back, and I'm loading my glutes and hamstrings, so it's not just leaning forward here, right? So getting maybe just a little bit of a quarter squat. Now, some people will need even more support. And so what we do is we can use a wall, or a fence in this case, a chair, or even a pole. And I'm gonna show you a few of these different things to help improve range of motion on the squat, as well as stability. So when you have more stability, external stability, that will free up some mobility in your body, okay? And then once you practice that range of motion, once you grease that groove, then you create the stability combined with the mobility in your body, and then you can gradually graduate away from the external stability source. So I've got a pole and I've got a chair, and if you have a chair at home, that's perfectly fine. What you would do is you just put it right in front of you, just step back to a comfortable place, and you're just putting enough of your hand, enough of your weight on the chair so you're giving yourself some stability, okay? You might go a little bit wider with your stance. That also helps sometimes. So just using the chair, okay? Now, a little bit of a higher chair can help. So as you see, if I go over to the fence, I can have my hands a little bit higher, and that affords me a little bit more stability. It takes away a little of the mobility at the end range, but adding that external stability, either through a chair, a fence, or a pole. I'll show you the pole now, okay? So the same thing. A pole I like because it has, we're taking away some of the stability, but it gives us a little bit more range of motion to accommodate what our body can do. So I can reach my arms a little bit further, and as I reach my arms out further, I'm able to sit down into my squat a little better. So many people will find that the pole is a really good place to be overall. The stability of a chair, the stability of the wall is a great starting point for most, but graduating into the pole is really helpful. And then what you can do is you can actually just graduate to just one hand. Just using one hand, and maybe you alternate hands. Maybe you even notice a difference depending on which hand is on the pole or on the chair. You can do the same thing, the chair with just one hand. And you might notice that one hand is better than the other, or even just using one hand is better than two. So it's a little bit of an experimentation, but adding that external source of stability to a squat is really helpful. Another thing that can be really helpful is lifting your heels a little bit. So maybe you have like a piece of carpet or a piece of wood, a little 2x4, you put your heels on that 2x4, and that will compensate for a lack of range of motion in the ankle and allow you to get a little bit deeper. I don't have anything, well actually I'll put my heels on this, and you'll see that going to be much easier for me to squat down and then back up. Squat down and then back up, okay? So using that, and you can use it in combination with your external stability as well to really drive home that range of motion. So hands here, a little bit forward's okay, because with the heels elevated, I'm going to be sitting back naturally. So here and then back home, okay? So those would be some places to start if you have an issue with the full body weight squat. Now, one thing that I would encourage you to do is to spend a little bit more time in the deep squat position. So with your external source of stability, a chair might be really handy here, or the pole, is to hang out in that low position. So maybe you even have your heels elevated, you got your hand here, just hang out here. Just kind of get familiar with that. And it's okay if your back rounds a little bit in this position. What we want to try to do is open up the hips and get them used to being in this range of motion. This doesn't mean you always have to squat this low, but if you can free up this range of motion and get familiar with it and sit in that low squat, the full squat position comfortably, you're going to be able to squat a full range of motion more comfortably as well. So maybe you hang out here, and I'm going to change this way, show you how you can use your elbows, because a lot of people will feel like there's a restriction in the groin, the adductor muscles, and you can kind of push your elbows into the insides of your knees and really open things up a little bit more, okay? So maybe you hang out there. Maybe you just start with 5 or 10 seconds with that. Gradually working your way up to 30 seconds, 45 seconds, a minute, or accumulating 90 seconds to 2 minutes a day in that position. You will notice radical changes in your mobility if you practice that alone. Not just in terms of being able to squat better, but just overall mobility. And probably if you have lower back sensitivities, probably notice an improvement in those areas as well as you open up the hips, okay? So bodyweight squat regressions would be using an external source of stability, whether it's a chair, whether it's a wall, whether it's a pole, gradually working away from 4 points of stability. So if you have 2 feet on the ground, you have 2 points of stability. If you have 2 feet on the ground and a hand on the chair, you have 3 points of stability. If you have 2 feet on the ground and 2 hands on the chair, you have 4 points of stability. So if you need to start with 4 points of stability, that's okay. We gradually want to work away to 3 points and then ultimately to 2 points. And then we can start worrying about loading it with things like kettlebells, dumbbells, barbells, things like that. But most importantly, we want to get familiar with that range of motion, what that looks like, okay? So if you have questions, comments, you want to learn more, let me know in the comments. Now another thing here is learning how to squat is a practice. So I talked about hanging out in that deep squat for a period of time every single day, gradually working your way, progressing forward over time. That's a good practice, but also practice your body weight squat. Set a timer to go off every hour. And every hour, do 3, 5 squats, and gradually over time do more. But just practice it. Think of it less as an exercise and more of it as a movement practice. This needs to become part of your movement practice every single day if you want to get better at it, all right? I'd love to hear from you. Let me know if this is helpful. Let me know if you have questions. Let me know if you need even more regressions. There's possibly even more things that we could do to dial this back for you, okay? All right, until next time, be well, be grateful, be a hero. Peace out.